It was not unusual for King Wymond to summon me. As the captain of the guard, I was often asked to report about the men, the store of weapons in the arsenal, and how the new recruits were doing in their training. But as I climbed the stone steps up the tower, I wonder what had prompted this meeting. Two infantrymen guarded the door as I approached the king's chambers. They straightened in their boots when they saw me and opened the heavy wooden door. I stepped into the room and stopped. His Grace sat in a carved wooden chair in front of an immense fireplace, and he appeared to be asleep. Should I wake him or leave quietly? The vigorous and stalwart king I had known in my youth had faded into a gaunt imitation of his previous self. A thin wisp of white hair covered his freckled scalp, and his whiskers resembled frosted grass on a winter morning. My heart went out to the old man. 20 years earlier, he'd taken notice of the orphan who'd made a home in the barracks. In return for shelter and food, I'd gladly acted as a messenger, boot cleaner, and horse groomer for whichever soldier would put up with me. Through the years, Wymond had trained me in combat tactics and strategies. As his silent shadow, I'd learned the frustrations of diplomacy, the grief of losing good men in battle, and the immense weight of being responsible for everyone's welfare. I loved my king as I would a father, and I'd do anything he asked of me. The flames dwindled, and I walked quietly to the fireplace to place fresh logs on the hearth. As I tended the blaze, I heard Wymond stir behind me.
"Oh,"
he muttered.
"Thank you. Old bones are harder to keep warm than young ones."
I stood and faced my king. "Are you well, my lord?" He waved away my question.
"Sit down, Ronan. I have an important errand for you."
I eased into the chair beside his. "How may I serve you?" A small smile appeared on his whiskered lips, and he placed a wrinkled hand on my arm.
"I've always been able to count on you. Many times I've wished you were my rightful heir, and not my rogue of a son."
I didn't know how to respond. Crown Prince Bayard had scorned the hard life of the army, preferring to study music and fashion. Castle gossips whispered that Bayard preferred the company of men and would never submit to the marriage bed. Were the rumors true? I didn't know. Prince Bayard hated me, often remarking that I was a sweaty, stinky oaf. Needless to say, I stayed away from him. At the present time, Bayard and two of his courtiers were in the Alran territory, where they reportedly enjoyed the forced hospitality of our ambassador. Wymond cleared his throat.
"As you know,"
he said,
"King Leoric of Hamren has the great misfortune of ruling a landlocked country. And there are some in his country who wish to take our port by force. Have you heard the stories about the atrocities the Hamren army wrought upon our people the last time they tried to seize our land?"
The Navarra cemeteries overflowed with graves from the last war. My father had died in that battle, and my mother had been killed by a Hamren arrow. Wymond pulled his wool cloak around his shoulders.
"When I learned war was imminent, I sent King Leoric a proposal. Hamren could have unfettered access to our ports in return for an alliance between our two countries. No more raids, no more battles, no more bloodshed."
I considered the possibility of peace. The people of Navarra bear a great hatred towards Hamren. It may be difficult to convince them that an alliance is a good idea. Wymond sighed loudly and closed his eyes.
"When the morning cock crows, and I wake in my bed, I give thanks that I still have time to secure peace for my land. Do you imagine I'll rest in my grave if my people have to fight for their lives?
Our king was like a loving father who must discipline his children. Even if the people of Navarra rankled at the thought of peace with their old enemy, our wise king would force it on us. You've offered King Leoric what he's always wanted. Why hasn't he already signed the document of alliance? Wymond rested his head in his hand.
Perhaps you've heard the rumors about Leoric's madness.
I believe it is common knowledge, I replied. Wymond smiled sadly.
Indeed. Since Leoric is unable to rule competently, the Privy Council has thrown their support behind his queen. The true ruler of Hamren is Lady Hildegard. She does not trust a simple signature on parchment. She wants something more tangible, something that will ensure a steadfast covenant between our two countries.
Such as? I asked.
Marriage, of course. Hildegard wants her daughter to marry my son. Then, and only then, will she sign. I've written to our embassy in Alren and ordered my son to return. If he fails to fulfill his duty, he will forfeit his title, his inheritance, and his right to the throne.
It was a drastic measure, but Wymond had no illusions about his only child. I'm sure the Crown Prince will return, I reassured him. That is too much to lose. The expression on Wymond's face showed his uncertainty.
Now, about that errand. I need you to gather your most trusted men and travel to Hamren. You are charged with escorting the princess and her ladies to Navarra. I need not tell you, the lady's safe arrival is of paramount importance. Queen Hildegard will follow 1 week later, and she has agreed to sign the document of alliance at the end of the wedding ceremony.
Escorting a princess doesn't sound like a dangerous undertaking. I'll need no more than a handful of men. Wymond's face darkened.
Don't be misled. There are many in Hamren who oppose the Union. My spies tell me there are conspirators afoot who would rather see Princess Eleanor in her tomb than on the throne of Navarra.
A cold hand squeezed my heart. What had seemed like a simple task had suddenly become of utmost importance. I will take a full complement of men, scouts, cavalry, and infantry. We will leave in 2 days. Upon my life, I will bring the lady to the altar. Wymond smiled and relaxed in his chair.
I know you will, Sir Ronan. I never doubted you.